Scott's fire is a bit old-fashioned, but in her home that fire is vital. For her baking and washing, she must have coal. She can't do without coal or gas or electricity, nor can we. That's why Jack Scott is such a very important person, for Jack is a miner. Without coal, the life of this country would come to a stop. It's vital to the life of each one of us. Jack's job is to get coal out of the earth. He's on the morning shift, so he has to be off to work early. There are as many different sorts of mining areas as there are different kinds of coal. Jack Scott's cottage is in a village called Hill, about 10 minutes bike ride to work. It's difficult to believe that there's a colliery within miles, yet quite a lot of pits are in the countryside like this. Jack's father is 64 and still an underground worker. There are many families like the Scotts, families in which the job of coal mining has been passed on for generations, from father to son. This is where they work, Hilton, Maine. It's an average sort of a pit, not specially up to date, but not out of date either. Not specially big, but big enough to give us an idea of how pits work today. Of the 600 men on the morning shift, a fair proportion, living in towns 7 or 10 miles away, come by bus. Jack's first call is at the pit head baths, where he changes into his working clothes. His helmet is specially made to protect his head underground. The slot in front is for his cap lamp. At the lamp house, he hands in his check. In exchange, he gets a lamp. As long as this check's in the lamp house, it's a sign that Jack is on shift. On this side, the men going on shift get their lamps. On the other, the men coming off hand theirs in and collect their telltale checks. It's rush hour for the lamp men. Most men have a cap lamp like Jack's. It's light and leaves your hands free. Others have the older type hand lamp with a hook at the top. Underground, it's useful for hanging from girders overhead. From the lamp house, Jack and his mates make their way to the pit head. There, while they're waiting for the cage, they are searched to make sure that no cigarettes or matches are taken down the pit. At the same time, their lamps are checked. An official and 2 workmen do the searching. It's a safety precaution which applies to everyone, pit manager or haulage lad. Coal getting is done in pairs. Roy here is Jack's mate. Their next-door neighbors on the face, so to speak, are the 2 Arthurs. Young Arthur Mason and Arthur Richards, who's an old hand at the job. He is one of the coal-face workers' representatives on the pit consultative committee. As one shift waits to go down, the other is coming up. The night shift men have been at work for 8 hours, not actually getting coal, but making everything ready for Jack and his mates. Each of the 3 shifts has its own particular job to do, and in a pit, the work never stops. The cages that take Jack and the rest down the pit are raised and lowered up and down the shafts by wire ropes. These are guided by the 2 wheels on the headstocks. You will see them at any colliery. There are 2 shafts. One is used for bringing up the coal, the other carries men and all the materials and machinery needed in the pit. Both are essential for ventilation. It's best seen in diagram. Because of the directions in which the air travels through them, one is known as the downcast shaft, and the other as the upcast. The shafts are something more than great lifts. If we could see below ground, we would see that they are the lungs of the pit. Air is kept circulating through the pit by a gigantic electric fan. It sucks air down one shaft, through miles of pit workings, and up the other shaft. Where there are connecting roads, airlock doors are fitted to ensure that the main stream of air circulates throughout the working. By this time, the cage will have reached the pit bottom, 650 yards down, over a third of a mile. But even at the pit bottom, it's still a long way to the place where Jack actually works. The fact is, his journey's only just begun.
Ah, that's right enough. It's a mile from my house to the pit head, and it's another good mile from the pit bottom to the coal face where I work. Before we've gone far, we pass the deputy's office, a very important place. I suppose you'd call it the nerve center of the pit. In there, the deputies, that's our word for foreman, by the way, meet between shifts. They talk over what's been happening during the old shift and make plans for the new. That office is also a telephone exchange. From it, you can speak to any part of the pit, underground or on the surface. Down here, the main roads, tunnels you'd call them, are quite broad and well lighted. This is the main haulage road. When we've got started on the face, the tubs will be running along it, bringing out the coal. It all looks solid enough, and it is really, but here and there you can see the effects of the natural pressures which are constantly pushing the roads out of shape. This kind of thing, for instance. Every few hundred yards or so, you pass side roads leading off to the various working districts. Altogether, there's 5 coal faces in this pit. There's plenty of this bending business, but you seem to get used to it, and it never goes on for long. We've been walking for 20 minutes now, and there's not much further to go. This is the loading point, where they'll soon be filling tubs with our coal. It's about 300 or 400 yards from the face, and the coal is carried along on a conveyor. It's not working now, but soon after we get on the face, it'll be taking away tons of coal every minute. Well, we're there. From the pit bottom, it's been half an hour's walk. You don't need much on your back when you get in coal, so we strip off and onto the face. Straight away, we test the roof and make sure as everything is quite safe. It's a good seam I work in. The coal lies almost 6 foot thick. That means as we can stand upright while we're working. That's a blessing, because in quite a few mines the seams are much thinner and working is more difficult. First things we look for are the shot holes, used to blast down the coal, and the undercut. As usual, everything is ready for us. It's worth a lot to start the job on the right foot, and it's the business of the night shift to see as we do.
Yes, it was the night shift that got everything ready. First, they drilled the shot holes, each one 4 feet 6 inches deep. The position of each hole had been marked by the shift deputy beforehand, and when the driller finished one, he moved along to the next. But shot firing alone won't bring down enough coal unless the face is also undercut. So next, on the night shift, close behind the drillers, came the cutting team. Years ago, all coal cutting was done by hand-pick. Today, machine cutting is the rule in most pits. The business end of it is the jib. And it's these teeth, revolving round, that bite into the coal. When the coal is blasted, the undercut will help the explosives in bringing it down. Wedges are put in the cut to prevent lumps of coal rolling from the face and also to stop the rock pressure on the coal from closing up the cut. The night shift has done its work, drilling and cutting.
But before we can start in earnest, we have to clear the coal loosened by the cutter. There's more of this cutter coal to be got away than you'd think. By the time we've finished with it all, we've shifted as much as a foot of loose coal. But most of the coal is still on that face. It'll have to be broken down before we can do anything else. And here's the man as'll do the job. Beck, the shot firer. Safety first and last. That's the watchword when we're shot firing. And while I'm getting the ramming clay and explosives, Beck is busy testing for gas. He uses a flame safety lamp. If there's any gas about, you see a little blue halo on top of the flame. If that happens, there can be no firing till the gas has been cleared away. But there's no trouble here, so now we can go ahead. While Beck's cleaning the hole and testing for breaks, I get the clay ready. It goes in after the cartridge and the detonator. It prevents the charge blowing straight out of the hole and makes sure as the force of the explosion spreads right through the surrounding coal. But before we can fire, there's still another safety precaution to be taken. That's stone dusting. Stone dust mixes with the coal dust and makes it non-explosive. When this job is done, Beck posts one of us down the face, in this case Roy, to see as nobody comes along in that direction while we're firing. He clears the rest of us off to a shelter and then makes his final test for gas. Of course, as the man in charge, the shot firer is always the last to leave the part of the face where the shot is being fired. This cable will carry the electric current as fires the charge.
Fire on one.
Last off, first back is the shot firer's job. When he's made sure as everything is safe, he calls us out of the shelter. Good. Now we can get to work. Although we've been told as everything's safe, we must make sure for ourselves. You can always tell by the sound of the roof when you tap it, whether it's all right or not. It's real work, this. Each pair, Roy and I together like, or the two Arthurs, has what we call a stent to work. And on this face, it's 10 yards. Our face is 130 yards long, so you can reckon as there's 26 of us working on it. When we've shifted the coal brought down by the shot, we call for Beck again. More shot firing, more filling. So it goes on all through the morning. But, you know, there's more to our job than just getting the coal onto the conveyor. We've got to make the roof secure where the coal come away from it. Steel props and bars do the job. We set the prop upright and then wedge the bar along the roof. Although we use steel here, many pits have wooden props for this job. But whichever you use, it's a temporary support, and there'll be something more permanent later. We hardly realize it when we're out at work, but by the end of our shift, we'll have blown down and shoveled away coal to a depth of 4.5 foot. That means we'll be 4.5 foot further forward, so everything else, and particularly the conveyor, has to move forward as well. That's the job of the afternoon shift. The furniture remove, as some of us call them.
Their job is rather like rolling up a carpet, but it's a lot harder to do. First, the conveyor belting will be broken into sections and rolled clear. Then the rollers and structure will be shifted forward towards the face. Finally, the belt will be relayed. It looks easy enough, but it takes the best part of 6 hours to complete the whole change, all the way along the face. Another job that'll be done on this shift is packing. As you drive your coal face forward, you can't afford to leave an unsupported space behind you. During the day shift, props were erected. Now these are withdrawn, and in their place, permanent packs are built to support the roof, 1 every 7 yards. And when the furniture removers have done their work, the whole face is ready for the night shift. The drillers and cutters. Remember them? That's how the 3-shift system works at this pit. Look at it again. In diagram this time. First, the night shift. Shot holes are drilled, and the coal is undercut. At some pits, cutting is done first before drilling. Next, the morning shift, Jack Scott's shift. Shot firing and filling. So it goes on until the coal face has been driven forward 4.5 feet. Lastly, the afternoon shift, the furniture removers. The conveyor is shifted forward. This is called turning over. Packs, built every 7 yards, hold up the roof as the face advances. So the afternoon shift builds new packs. There it is in a nutshell. Night, drilling and cutting. Morning, shot firing and filling. Afternoon, turning over and packing.
Well, we don't do so bad. On an average, we get 300 tons of coal off our face each shift. That's about 12 tons a man. The conveyor takes it to the loading point. We passed that on our way in, as you remember.
The coal is loaded into the tubs which will carry it to the surface. These tubs are lashed to the haulage rope and pulled by it from the loading point to the pit bottom. All traffic converges on the pit bottom. During the day shift, a continuous stream of full tubs is sent from there to the surface. As the full tubs go in one side of the cage, the empties, which have been sent down from the surface, come out the other and are sent back to the main haulage road to be filled again. All through this shift, the tubs are bringing the coal out from the 5 different faces to the pit bottom. It's vital that the roads along which they travel are kept in good order. Because of the severe pressure which is pushing these roads out of shape, there's always repair and maintenance going on in the pit. The displaced rock is torn away and the new roof supported by steel arches. The manager of a colliery is always about somewhere. Mr. Nelson is the manager at Hilton, Maine, and he'll stop to discuss every variety of work that's going on. But apart from supervising the day-to-day running of the pit, he is also responsible for planning for the future.
All the plans are examined and discussed by the Pit Consultative Committee. On it are representatives of the management and the men. Everyone in the pit has his spokesman. The face workers, men like Jack Scott, are represented by Arthur Richards. Jack Fletcher puts the point of view of the haulage men, and Les Scarrett watches the interests of all the colliery tradesmen. Ken Hale is one of the younger generation. He speaks for the surface engineers. We are planning ahead to work distant seams which we know contain over 60 million tons of coal, enough to last 150 years at the present rate of output. The first essential is a new haulage road. We're making a start by driving it along here and across the existing main haulage road. This is where we've got to so far. They're working there now.
They're blasting and hacking their way through solid rock. Every week, they drive 12 yards through that wall towards what lies beyond. And that's not only more coal. It's a reorganized pit with new mechanical aids for getting the coal and hauling it to the surface. And with new roads as roomy and clean as a city subway, so that Jack Scott and his mates will be able to travel to and from their work by train. This already happens in some pits. It's what they're aiming at in Hilton, Maine.
But at present, and for a few years to come, I reckon, we'll still have to walk. When we pack up, it's early afternoon, and at the end of a tough shift, that walk seems a lot harder and longer than it did in the morning. It's grand to get above ground again, and to get yourself cleaned up. After a hard shift, a hot shower's a treat. It freshens you up, you know, and means you can go home from work as clean as you were when you set out. At the Pithead Canteen, you can get anything from a cup of tea to a full meal. And you can have a chat with your workmates, too. More often than not, we find ourselves talking about what we do with our spare time. It's surprising how many different hobbies there are, among even the few fellas you know really well. I don't know whether you'd call being a union secretary a hobby, but if it is, then it's one that don't leave you no time to yourself. From the moment Albert Parks comes out of the pit, people are asking him for help and advice. Even when he gets home, he has visitors on union business. Of course, Albert Parks is getting on a bit now, but there's plenty of young fellas just as keen to spend their leisure time in union or local government service. Take Jack Greenaway, for instance. He's a member of the Pit Consultative Committee. He's just turned 30, and he's already chairman of his parish council. In our parish, the pit plays its part all right. We've a fine old church, and every one of the bell ringers is a miner. My father among them. George Allen, who still works at the colliery, is the organist. Music for hobby, I suppose, is common enough, but you don't come across so many artists. Albert Appleby has been painting ever since he was a young lad. Pretty well, I reckon, since he first went down the pit at 15. My hobbies, me family. There's nothing I like better than getting home after shift for a sit-down and a meal. Then, often enough, young Desmond and I go shooting together. We're right in the heart of the country where we live, and I like it. But it's different from most pit villages in more ways than one. Here, you'll make your own recreations. But in most mining areas, you'll find an institute where there's nothing to worry about except the way you're going to enjoy yourself.
These institutes were funded by the Miners' Welfare Commission and are governed by a committee of local men. They are for the whole family. Up and down the country, in dozens of different districts, miners and their folk come together at their institute and enjoy themselves. There are games to suit every taste and season. At one place, they've even built their own swimming pool. And of course, there's often the brass band, which is so common a feature of mining communities. At some of the larger institutes, there is a concert hall and games room. Saturday night's the night when everyone brings his wife or girlfriend along for a dance and a sing-song. But large or small, every institute has this in common, that every evening of the week there's something happening. It may be the youth club, with its variety of activities run by local miners. It may be the Women's Institute evening. Or it may be the drama club meeting. And if there are any Welshmen about, it's almost certain that one evening will be given over to the Institute choir. There's always something going on. These institutes are the center of every mining community. Whilst the fun goes on, the wheels are turning above ground and below ground all the time. While some miners play, others work. Coal getting continues all round the clock.